Okay, so Hare Krishna, dear ladies, and welcome to the May Urban Devi Sangha and Women's Discussion Group. A special welcome to those joining us for the first time. If you are joining us for the first time, please write it in the chat so that we can all say hello. I promise, as always, that we're a very friendly group, so we'll be happy to hear from you. So my name is Damodar Priya Devi Dasi, and I co-host this monthly gathering with our dear Rukmini Walker and Surabhi Govinda Devi Dasi. So let me introduce our guest speaker for today. So Nanda-Nandana Devi Dasi first encountered the practice of Krishna consciousness in Boston in the early 1990s. And since then, she has dedicated herself to studying and teaching Srila Prabhupada's books and has organized seminars and workshops on topics such as effective communication, time management, and building healthy relationships. Over the years, she has also managed kitchen departments and large-scale prasadam distribution programs at various ISKCON centers and projects. And currently, she hosts a YouTube channel called Inform Yourself, where she shares practical insights into the practice of bhakti yoga. So we'll definitely be linking to that YouTube in a little while. So today's topic is increase your taste for japa. And just a brief description on that. So she shares how chanting is important and it has many benefits that it brings, but many of us do not know how to develop a taste for it. So this can make chanting feel tedious at times. And through his poetic prayers and glorification of chanting, which is the Siksastaka, Lord Chaitanya offers guidance on how to recognize and address this challenge. And Nanda shares that the good news is that everyone has the opportunity to deepen their love for chanting through a simple yet effective method. So thank you so much for joining us today, Nanda, and please, the floor is yours.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So let me just everyone can see. Okay. Let me just hide my floating meeting panels. Okay. Okay, so as Damodar Priya said, we're going to be talking about increasing your taste for chanting. So I just want to ask a question to start with, and Damodar Priya is going to be fielding those questions in the chat. And welcome to, I think there was someone in the chat who said it was her first time here. I think it was Christina maybe. Welcome and thanks for joining us. So we're talking about japa today. So increasing your taste for japa. So first question is, and we can have this in the chat group, is let me just get to the presentation. So we're going to talk about the why. So my first question to everybody is, if someone were to ask you what's japa, what would you say, like in a nutshell? What does that mean? What does that word even mean? Especially for those of you, maybe there's some people here who haven't heard of japa. If you could put in the chat group, what would you say, just in a nutshell, if someone asked you what's japa?
Meditation is one answer.
Okay. What kind of meditation?
Repeating a mantra many times, chanting the name of God or a mantra, or repeating the same name for a time.
Okay, perfect. So japa, and we do that, of course, on beads, right? Well, it doesn't have to be done on beads. That's another thing. If you don't have beads, you can still chant. Beads are just a way to keep track. So that's japa. And then what's the purpose of japa? If you were to tell somebody in a nutshell again, what is the purpose of japa?
Connect with God.
Yeah.
Purify
That's
oneself.
Yep. Yeah. Any other?
Some folks are typing, remembering Krishna. To get us in the practice and remember the name and to increase concentration.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Maintain a relationship with the divine.
Right, yeah, very nice. These are all great answers. Thank you. Okay, so this we find, well, I wrote CC for short, but there's a, for those of you who don't know, there's a book about Lord Chaitanya who introduced the chanting, the Hare Krishna mantra. It's called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's about his life and teachings. And at the end of these teachings, he talks about the result of chanting. So the result of chanting is that one awakens his love for Krishna, his or her, and tastes transcendental bliss. Ultimately, one attains the association of Krishna and engages in his devotional service as if immersing himself in a great ocean of love. And so, of course, when it's talking about this connection with God, or someone wrote that, there was a couple of those answers, was connecting with the divine or connecting with God or Krishna. When it speaks about this love, it's talking about a spiritual love. So it's a love that's not it's a love that's unconditional. So there's not any selfishness or envy contained within that love. It's just an exchange between God and the living being of pure love. And so this is what the japa does. And we look at, let's say, our japa beads, and we sit down to chant, and it almost sounds too simple, right? To say, I just chant this mantra and it awakens um, love, as if I'm immersing myself in a great ocean of love. So some of us who have tried japa, we may have had a little taste of this experience, or we may not have had much of a taste of that, and we kind of wonder why. So that's what we're gonna go into today. But these descriptions of this kind of connecting through japa, they're all true. So we're gonna go through a little bit of troubleshooting, right? Because if you do something in life and they tell you it's gonna get a certain result and it doesn't, then the first thing to do is troubleshoot. So you know what they say, like if an appliance isn't working, what's the first thing you do? See if it's plugged in. Right? Because you could be trying to use a device, it's like, this isn't working. They say it's supposed to do this and that, and it doesn't do it, and you're not plugged in. So we want to make sure we're plugged into Krishna. So japa plugs into Krishna, but under certain circumstances, which are very easy. It's very easy to get to that point. So that's the result of chanting. And that is in there are these prayers which we mentioned in the description that Lord Chaitanya spoke, called the Siksastaka, and it's a really simple Sanskrit word. It just means eight prayers. That's all Siksastaka means. It means 8 prayers. And so like Ashta means 8, and Shiksha is like instruction or prayer. Okay, so this is also described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I just wrote down what the verse number is in case anyone wants to look and read further in that area. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. So japa, or chanting, or connecting with God, it's not an imposition. It brings out something that's already there, that's been covered. And so we're kind of that chanting works to uncover that love that's there, that love that was spoken about in the other verse that we just read. And so that's something that you can do with your japa, is connect and reawaken that pure love, that connection. Okay, so this is an interesting question. One devotee, Ravineswar Prabhu is his name. When he was in college, one of his I think it was a theology professor, a religious studies professor. He said the question is not whether or not God exists, but whether or not he's available. So point being that if he's not available, it doesn't matter if he exists, right? Like, what is the point if he's there and he's not available? How is it relevant to us? And if he is available, that answers the existence question. So again, japa is a way to connect with Krishna in a way that makes him available. So he not only does he exist, but he's also available to us. Okay, so one of these Shikshasha, again, this is the 8 prayers. This is the first verse. Lord Chaitanya talks about all the things that come from chanting Krishna's name. So that can be japa, that can be kirtan. But japa is a way that we connect with Krishna that's very personal. Kirtan is great. If any of you have ever been to a kirtan, where we dance and we chant, or there's, we're playing instruments and we're singing the mantra, it's great. When you chant japa, it's more intimate. It's a little more personal. So it's that you're there with Krishna and, excuse me, no one else. There's not, it really gives you that opportunity to just sit and focus, because sometimes in kirtan, it's so much fun. Kirtan is fun. So sometimes we can get a little distracted by how fun it is rather than focusing on the name. So japa gives us that opportunity to say, well, now it's just me and Krishna and my mind, right? So now the effort that I put into connecting with Krishna during that japa can be very different than kirtan. It can happen in both places, but sometimes when we're doing kirtan, we may feel like we start to think about, oh, this is a great melody. I got to remember that for next time. Or this is like the way that person's playing that instrument is great. So we can sometimes be focused on other things. But in all cases, when Lord Chaitanya is talking about this chanting, he's talking about in these different circumstances. But today we're focusing on japa. So he says, let there be all victory for the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna. And now he talks about what the mantra is or does. It cleanses the mirror of the heart, and it stops the miseries of the blazing fire of material existence. The chanting is the waxing moon that spreads the white lotus of good fortune for all living entities. It is the life and soul of all education, right? So it brings knowledge. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna expands the blissful ocean of transcendental life. It gives a cooling effect to everyone and enables one to taste full nectar at every step. So again, when we read this, we often focus on this as like all these great reasons why we should chant. It's amazing. All these things you get from chanting, it's amazing. So we have all of these reasons why. And then we may try it and we may say, well, okay, there's the why, but my next why question is why am I not, for example, tasting full nectar at every step? Why why do I still have miseries and material existence? And so on. So we may see this. And so sometimes what ends up happening is someone says, well, okay, we hear this, when we come to Krishna consciousness and we get taught how to chant japa, we get told how great it is. And then we're not experiencing that. So we think, okay, I'll just keep that a secret. I don't know what's going on here, but I don't want to, when the devotees say chant and be happy, and it's not I'm not maybe necessarily experiencing that. There must be, I'll just kind of fake it till I make it, or I'll just assume that, it'll just eventually come someday. And we may not want to talk to someone about it because it may seem like, something's not right with me. Right, you may have that feeling like there must not be something right with me because everyone else is blissed out, right? They must be, because this is what it says it does. And so we could continue chanting and kind of never experience it and not really know why, but not feel comfortable talking to anybody about it. I mean, you may have people you're comfortable talking to about it, but there may be the case where you think, I'm not sure what to do about this. So now we're going to talk about the how. And this is where we get into troubleshooting. And Lord Chaitanya, in these prayers, he talks first about what we just read, like all the benefits you get from chanting. And now embedded in his next instruction is going to be, what's going on? Why don't I have a taste? And how can I get a taste? Okay, so before we go into that, I just want to say to everybody in this group, whether you've never chanted in your entire life, or you've been chanting for years or for a little while, every single one of you starting today can immediately go to a stage of what Prabhupada calls almost pure chanting. Every single person in this chat group, every friend who chants or who might want to take up chanting, you can go directly to the stage that Prabhupada calls almost pure chanting. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So there's 3 stages or types of chanting described in this tradition, and we're going to go over each one and what each stage brings. So these are the 3 stages. The first stage, and I put the Sanskrit here in case anyone's interested, but obviously you don't have to be able to pronounce it, memorize it, know it. I put the English here to make it easier. So the first stage is what I would call neglectful chanting. And then the second stage, which is the one that everyone can be on, is called almost pure chanting. And then there comes a point where it becomes pure chanting. It becomes to that pure stage. So this first stage we're going to talk about of neglectful chanting, that stage is, well, I loosely say stages because you don't even have to go on that stage. That stage can be skipped. That stage exists if we chant a certain way, but we can skip it and go to almost pure chanting. That's why I say everybody here today, right now, after this call, after this session, you can go and do almost pure chanting. Okay, so here's the hint that Lord Chaitanya gives in this prayer, this one of these 8 instructional prayers. He says, "My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name, there is all good fortune for the living entity." So he's still going over a little bit of the why, like what's the good stuff, what are the good things we get out of this? "And therefore you have many names such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself. You have invested all your potencies in those names, and there are no hard and fast rules for remembering them." So when Lord Chaitanya says there are no hard and fast rules, what he means is there doesn't have to be at a certain time of the day. You don't have to be born into a certain kind of family. You don't have to have done it before. There's all these things sometimes in religious rituals. There's all these things that have to be in place in order to do the ritual. And this goes above a ritual. You don't have to have all these things in place. There's no hard and fast rules. You can literally immediately start chanting, no matter what your condition. And then he says, "My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting." So offenses, what Prabhupada translates as offenses, the word is durdaivam, which means, well, actually, I'm sorry, unfortunate. When he says unfortunate, what he means is these offenses, what I was describing before, is neglect. It's kind of like a neglectful way of doing things. Because sometimes when you see the word offense, you think, "Oh my God, I'm offending." I'm chanting and I'm offending. It can be very scary. The first time I heard someone tell me that, I had just started chanting. I was chanting one round, which took me forever because I was trying to remember the mantra. And I went to a Sunday program at a temple, and someone said to me, we commit these offenses. And I was like, "What? What do you mean there's offenses?" And it made me nervous, but it just means that there's a neglect in the effort being made, because our relationship with Krishna is very personal. And like any relationship you have with anybody, there can be neglectful relationships and there can be very attentive relationships. And so with this, chanting is a relationship with Krishna. And so we would just want to make sure we're not neglectful. Okay, so this first stage of chanting, it's pronounced nama aparada, which just nama means name, and then aparada means that neglect. So that's literally all it means. It means it's kind of the opposite of an attentive relationship. So on this stage, when someone's chanting, they're not making any attempt to avoid that neglect, or what we would call offenses, where we may be our relationships with other practitioners may not be very if I want to say attentive. They could also be a little neglectful, or if someone maybe treats another practitioner in a harsh manner, that could be considered what they put in the category of offenses. And so the person who's chanting on this stage, they're not trying to avoid those things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what neglect means. So neglect is inattentiveness. So when you have these other offenses, like you may be harsh with another practitioner, or you may, so we all fall victim to episodes of intolerance or anger, right? Someone says something and we get angry, or we hear something and we jump to conclusions, and we may feel like our first reaction sometimes may be to say something that's not fair to the other person, or say something that's not nice about the other person, rather than trying to work out what the issue is. And so the root activity, or the root way that we do things that makes these other offenses difficult to deal with, or makes that kind of envy come up, or that intolerance, is this neglect, this pramada. So this word pramada, it just means to be neglectful or inattentive in Sanskrit. And so this stage of chanting is that kind of chanting. When you're chanting Krishna's name, there's no attempt to be attentive. And by attentive, what I mean is literally just hearing each name of the mantra. Hare Krishna, right? Just hearing each word. That's all you need to do, each name, and attempt to do that. We're going to talk about that for the next stage. So there's 3 types of pramada, or inattentiveness or neglect, or there's things that it stems from. So one is sleep. If you are going to try to meditate on Krishna, or connect with him through japa, get a good night's sleep. It can't be stressed enough, because the way it's described is that your intelligence controls your mind, right? If your mind is kind of all over the place, it's your intelligence that kind of keeps it from kind of going off in this direction, off in that direction. And, you notice, if, I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but when I'm tired, I'm definitely more irritable. I'm definitely more intolerant. Everything is annoying, right? Because your body's trying to like make up for the fact that it doesn't have the energy. And so anybody says anything and it's like, I can't deal with what you're saying right now, right? Because I didn't get enough sleep. When you notice those days when you've gotten proper sleep, you've gotten enough sleep, um, life's a little different. Life's a little easier to deal with. And so it's the same thing with chanting. If you've gotten enough sleep, um, your intelligence is very sharp. And when your intelligence is sharp, your mind can't run amok. Not as easily. It'll still do it, but the intelligence is there to say, we're not thinking about all these other things right now. We're focusing on these names that we're chanting. So always, and besides that, and I won't go into these now, but besides that, there's all sorts of kind of damage done to the body physically when we regularly don't get enough sleep. So the early morning hours are the easiest time to chant. You don't have to chant in the morning, but it is easier, but only if you're actually awake, right? Because we always talk about getting up early and chanting, but the other end of that is going to bed early. So if you get proper exercise and you get to bed at a reasonable time and you get proper sleep, waking up is no problem. Chanting is no problem in terms of you're not falling asleep while you're chanting. So make your life easier and healthier, and just make sure whenever possible, to get proper rest. Okay, so another type is distraction. And one thing you could do is think about all the things that actually distract you while you're chanting. Now, we know what the number one distraction in our life in this modern age of technology is. We all know we carry one we carry one version around that, our phone is just the most distracting thing we have. We're getting bombarded from every direction with messages from people all over the world at any time of the day, and to the point where you can't even keep track of where the message came from. Like, I know somebody told me something, but I can't remember if it was social media, if it was WhatsApp, if it was Messenger, and so trying to keep up with all that, it can be very distracting. But there are other distractions. We may go for a walk when we chant, and we maybe go for a walk somewhere we've never been before, and we're distracted by all the sights. That's a beautiful house. This is a beautiful forest. Oh, there's a waterfall over here. Oh, and so we maybe start, while we're looking at these things, but it is a type of distraction, even if it's Krishna's own creation and we're appreciating it. That's a separate activity. Appreciating Krishna in nature is a separate activity from chanting. So it can be a type of distraction. And then it's described lack of intensity or lack of interest or apathy. When we start to see japa is just something you said you would do, so you get it done and you distract yourself, or you just do other things to make it go by faster. That would be that lack of interest or apathy. I am doing it because I'm supposed to, but I don't really value it too much. And so that also can make your chanting neglectful. Okay, so at this level, the holy name remains hidden. So the reason why it remains hidden is because if you can imagine, let's say you decide to get together with a friend and there's something you want to tell them. And you start to tell them, yeah, I had a really difficult time with my family this weekend. And while you're talking, they pick up their phone and they start texting. So and maybe we can ask this really quick in the chat group. What's your reaction if you're revealing your mind to someone and they pick up their phone and start texting? Your first reaction going to be? What are you going to do in that situation? Do you keep revealing your mind, or what do you do? And someone could just give some quick responses.
They'll stop talking. They'll be hurt and stop talking.
Right. You stop talking.
Disconnect and feel sad.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's what it means when it says the holy name remains hidden. Exactly what we do in our own life. Krishna's like, okay, I'll get back to you later. You have something else to think about now. I'll come back later. So if you're not making an attempt to pay attention to Krishna, he doesn't make an attempt to pay attention to you because he sees you're not ready yet, right? And it's not like an anger thing. It's not like Krishna stomps away angry. Just say, okay, I'll come back when you're ready. So that's why at this stage, the holy name remains hidden. And this is the stage where you're not going to get a taste. You just won't. If there's no attempt, there will be no taste because Krishna is remaining hidden because you're not actually trying to connect with him. So let's talk about how we can connect with him. So this is again that Nama Basa, almost pure chanting, or the purifying stage. So again, Nama just means name. It's really easy to remember. A lot of Sanskrit words are just very similar to English words. So Nama is name. Abhasa means reflection. And I'm going to talk about why it means reflection in a minute. But almost pure chanting means there's an attempt to avoid neglect and other offenses, an attempt. And making an attempt is the key here, because you don't have to be perfect. Just the act of trying to bring your mind back whenever it wanders is called almost pure chanting. So that's why I say everyone can immediately start on this stage. All you have to do when you chant, and by the way, the mind wanders by default. That's the default position of the mind when we're in our kind of conditioned state, our state where we're not yet connected with Krishna. Our mind by default is going to say, why don't we do something else instead of chanting? Right. So even though our intelligence says, yeah, I'd love to chant and connect with Krishna, the mind is like, I can think of something better to do. And so the mind is just like, hey, remember that letter someone sent you the other day that you haven't responded to yet, that you should respond to right now at this very moment while you're chanting instead of after? Or remember that thing someone said to you, or did you turn off the stove? There's this, the mind is just like, I'm going to try to bring you everywhere else. And that's why it's important to get enough sleep. Because when you're more awake, it's easier to bring the mind back whenever it wanders. So I kind of picture the mind like a dog on a leash, right? A squirrel runs by, the dog goes running. You have a retractable leash, you just pull the dog back, right? Just like, no, like you can't run after the squirrel. So the mind is like trying to run off, and the intelligence is like the leash. It just brings the mind back. Like, we're doing this right now. So why don't you help me get on board with this? You want to get the mind on board, because when you do get the mind on board, the mind is totally into it. So when you make this attempt to chant attentively, expect your mind to wander, and expect it to wander pretty quickly. Because even if you've got your whole, you know, like sanctuary type space set up, you've gotten a good night's sleep, you've gotten up early, you're hydrated, you have your beads, and you're like, I'm going to do this. Within seconds, your mind is like, oh yeah, we're going to do something else over here, over there. So you don't want to feel despondent, because that's what, like, I would expect that's what it's going to do. It's going to run off. And so knowing that and expecting that means that you're just say, okay, I know this is going to happen, but every time I notice it happening, I'm going to bring my mind back, and I'm going to hear the mantra as long as I can until the mind wanders again. And when I notice it wandered again, I'm going to bring it back and hear the mantra until it wandered. So you're really making that effort. And that is almost pure chanting. That is the stage that's purifying. So the purification process, I threw in another Sanskrit word here, anartha. Anartha just means things that have no value. So these are like bad habits that we have, like, doing things based on envy or greed, or those kind of vices. And then nivritti just means that process of turning it around. So you're turning valueless things into valuable things. That's what anartha nivritti means. It's like I'm turning it the other way. It's not anartha. So the in the beginning means like no value. Artha means value, and anartha means no value. So you're turning it around to be artha. It's valuable. How I behave, it's valuable in my spiritual practice with other devotees, with Krishna. And so when you do this attempt to bring the mind back when it wanders, that process of purification begins. And what Lord Chaitanya, I don't know if you remember what he said in his first instruction, was that it cleanses the mirror of the mind. So just real quick in the chats, does anyone know what's being cleansed off the mirror? And what do you see once the mirror is cleansed?
We don't have any responses yet.
Okay. Okay.
But oh, here we go. Our true self, my ego.
Yeah, exactly. There's the mirror of the mind, means that this mirror reflects you and your true self, so you can see who you actually are. And the dust on the mirror is the false conception of who you are, that you're not spirit, that you're a material body, and the current one that you're in is your eternal identity. But so that's what chanting does. It wipes off that mirror, basically. And it clears away those kind of illusory conceptions, thinking that I'm in that I'm this body, thinking that I'm going to my eternal identity is this body, and so on. It clears away those misconceptions. And that's what this stage of chanting does. That's why it's called the purifying stage. When you get to the pure stage, that mirror has been cleansed. You could actually see who you are. It's self-realization. You realize who you are as a person, as a soul. Okay, so now I want to talk about this, what this reflection means. So Haridas Thakur, he was the what they call the Namacharya, which means he taught by example about chanting the holy name. He chanted so many rounds every day, and he spent so much time with his japa. And so he's considered the expert in this type of chanting. So he explains that the holy name is like the sun below the horizon on this stage, but the dawning twilight is in the sky, which destroys all sinful reactions. So basically, the story that he tells is that when you have those misconceptions, thinking that you're not a soul, an eternal soul, but you think that you're a temporary body, that's called it's like a darkness of like ignorance is like what they compare to darkness. You can't see the reality. And so he tells an analogy of like being in a forest at night. How many people would like to be wandering in a forest in pitch black? I mean, who knows what the heck animals are out there? Who knows what, psychopaths might be out there? It's like no one wants to be out there unless you're with a gigantic group of people who, have weapons training or something. But, outside of that, you don't want to be in that forest in the dark because it could be very scary. And so he likens the holy name to when the sun starts to come up and it illuminates that dark forest. And so he says, when the sun comes up, all the rogues and thieves go back to their lair, and the animals, go away, like the predatory animals. And so that sun is coming up, but it's a twilight. So meaning the reflection means that it's not the full manifestation of the sun. It's the reflected light from the sun. And so if you chant on this stage, always trying to bring the mind back when it wanders, Krishna will begin to reveal a reflection of himself. That's what that means. And so at the pure stage is like the full manifestation of the sun. High noon, you could see the sun. But at this stage, you start to get the reflection. That's what Namabhasa means. Abhasa means reflection. So it's a reflection of the name. It's not the full manifestation. But even that alone, just to experience that reflection is very blissful. You begin to get a taste for chanting. You want to continue to do it more and more, and it gets easier and easier to control the mind, to bring the mind back when it wanders, because even the mind's is like, actually, I like this. I don't think we have to find something else to do at this point. We want to, this is really nice. So on this stage, and I can't stress it enough, this is the attempt to avoid this neglect. It doesn't have to be a pure result of it. It just has to be an attempt. So we expect the mind to wander, and then we just bring it back whenever it does. And anybody from any walk of life, at any time of the day, at any day of the year, any day of the week can experience this. So we're making this attempt. And he says that this actually, this brings liberation. Now, devotees, their main goal is not liberation. Their main goal is that loving exchange with Krishna. But this, it's kind of like a perk. It's like this thing that automatically comes, that we're not striving for, but it comes along with it. Okay, so then the final stage is Shuddhanam, which is pure chanting. Shuddha just means pure, and Nama means name. So it's the pure name. So this is when the mind, one becomes spontaneously attracted to Krishna. This is when the mind wanders to Krishna rather than the other way around, right? Right now, our default mode is the mind wanders away from Krishna. This one, it would be a person who is on this stage. They may go to work and they have to focus on their work, and their mind keeps wandering to Krishna. It's kind of the other way around, right? It's like, oh yeah, I've got to do this work. And your mind keeps wandering to Krishna. And then one attains ecstasy and spontaneous devotional service. So there's a bliss, there's a happiness, and your service to Krishna becomes very spontaneous. And then Krishna is completely revealed. There's direct darshan. Now, this stage, one of our previous teachers in our line, he talks about this previous stage, Namabhasa. He talks about that a lot. But he doesn't talk about this stage very much, because when you're there, there's kind of nothing to really talk about except to describe it, right? It's like, this is great. Yeah, it's great. You guys should try it out. When you guys get here, it's great. But the Namabhasa, he talks about, like, if you read his books, like the midsection of his book is all about Namabhasa, which is like, now let's, it's like that, it's like boot camp. It's like, let's try to get you ready, like get you on that stage. Here's what Namabhasa is like. Here's why you should do it. Here's what it brings. Here's what, there's all these things. And then it's going to eventually lead to this stage of Shuddhanam, which is pure chanting. Okay, so I have this thing. I have a Japa self-assessment. This is a private thing. You can always share with your friends if you want, but I try to do this where I have people say on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being, japa is a burden that I do only out of duty. I try to distract myself with other things while I chant, right? That's like your lowest level of japa, and we've all had those days. And then the middle ground is, it's not always a burden. Sometimes I try to pay attention. And then 10 would be, my taste for japa knows no limits. I want to chant 24/7, right? So you can do this for yourself sometimes. You could say, okay, today I'm going to try to bring my mind back whenever it wanders, and do a little assessment, see where I am on the scale. And the purpose of the scale is not to judge yourself, it's to troubleshoot. Troubleshoot is my favorite word of all time, because everything we do in life can always be improved with some effort, right? So if our japa is not great, we just have to troubleshoot and figure out how to make it better. Because we're not expecting ourselves to be perfect. We're not expecting ourselves to be on the, 10 on this scale. We're not expecting ourselves to be at Shuddhanam. We're expecting, right now, I have a misconception I have difficulty paying attention. My life is hectic. My life is busy. There's a lot on my mind. So this can be difficult. So what can I do? How can I troubleshoot to make it better? How can I troubleshoot to bring it up the scale a little bit and just see it as a gradual process? The more you practice, the better you get at something, right? So the more you practice bringing your mind back whenever it wanders, the better you get at it. And you can see because the amount of time you spend chanting is going to be the same whether you try to pay attention or not. So while you're there, might as well try to pay attention, right? So that's, and then just kind of troubleshoot, like gauge it, just see where am I at. So I'm putting this out there for anybody who wants to just in your own private assessment, or if you want to share this with other people afterwards, or kind of keep it on hand. I just put that out there for that purpose. Okay, yeah, so that's how to get to the stage of having it, improving your taste for japa.
Thank you so much, Nanda.
Welcome.
And we're going to be going into our breakout rooms where we're going to be talking about the reflections questions that you put together for us. So I just want to read those aloud for everyone, and we're going to be sharing them in the chat as well as our WhatsApp groups. So those are, which of the three types of pramada or inattentiveness is your most challenging? And what are some practical options you have for addressing that particular challenge? Okay, so welcome back, everyone. It is time for our Q&A and reflection section. This is the time for us to share any questions that we may have for Nanda, or any reflections from our time together in the breakout rooms. And we have a volunteer. Kelly, please go ahead.
So this has just been kind of a Krishna miracle, the entire presentation. What an amazing presentation. I've chanted for years and certainly tapped into to feeling better than I've ever felt, but I didn't know what we learned today. I didn't know the sacredness of calling oneself back. That just struck right to my heart, and yeah, just a miracle. So I did my hair this way. And when I did this morning, I thought of Rukmini Walker. So I was in group with Rukmini Walker, who had just been with Madhava and Kunti and Rajalila and Ekavira, who are the people that have brought my heart straight to bhakti after my husband. And I'm just so moved by the magic and power of the timing of all of this and the holiness of calling oneself back, that is almost pure. I'm just awed because we've certainly all done that. And now to know that that is enough, you will find yourself where you need to be. I'm just so grateful. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kelly. Sometimes it can be difficult to be the first one to share, but knowing that you were in Rukmini's group, that makes sense because
Well,
she's very encouraging.
so encouraging, but just the practicality of, I haven't read the Chaitanya Chamrita, so I didn't know these things are so very important, and I've been chanting for a while. So then to connect the knowledge with the feeling that I've already had is just so, I feel an understanding in my muscle memory that I have new meaning to what I'm doing. And that as much as I call myself back, because obviously distraction is the one that's most challenging for me. And all of them I do, but to call myself back, that in itself is the purest prayer. If you want to be sincere, you are being sincere by wanting that. And my heart, I read that in a book yesterday. So I just feel like, wow, very powerful. And I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. Haribol.
Yeah, I just would like to share also. Anybody else have their hand up at all?
Not yet, Rukmini. So go ahead.
Don't be shy to share because this is such a rich time. But, I find so, Nanda, you're quite, I also found this, your presentation, Nanda, to be so practical, so relatable. I love so many examples you gave. The mind like a dog on a leash. You don't just let go of the leash and say, okay, my dog, my dear dog, just go run through the forest. And when you come back in a few days with burrs all over your fur, we'll deal with it. No, you keep pulling them back. I love that. And I loved so many things you said. And I think your question, like sleep, distraction, apathy, feel like from time to time I deal with all of them, and I love what you said. To me, it was so relatable, so practical. It starts the night before, my friends, get a good night's sleep. I wanted to say that I hope I'm not talking too much, but I like to have a bottle of water next to me when I'm chanting, because then if I do start to get dozing off, then that water really helps to just have that water there just in case. Distraction. I try to make sure that I don't have my phone anywhere near me in the same room. What to speak of computer, like I'm trying, I wouldn't say I'm always successful, but I try to not look at my phone until I have my rounds done in the morning. So just put it in the other room, lock it in a safe, throw it on the roof, whatever you need to do. And then apathy is like, wow, it's so toxic, like I have to show up, and show Krishna that I care. That, like Lord Chaitanya says, you've made yourself so easily accessible in your name. Do I even care? Will I even try? So yeah, apathy is so toxic, right? What do you guys think? I'm just
So we
going.
actually have a question that came in via the private chat for Nanda. So Nanda, we have a question about maybe if you could speak to the role of health problems. So we have some participants that have chronic health or have had health issues come up, and they're not sure how that factors into what you've been sharing in terms of our relationship to Japa. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Oh, go ahead. Do
I
someone.
was just going to say just a quick reflection, if I may. I'll be very quick, but just so many of the things that we talked about, and this has been a wonderful presentation. And I appreciated too when you said that many of us, if not all of us, struggle with our japa, but we don't talk about it. So I just thought, I liked my breakout group. I thought everybody was getting up at 3 and they were all done by 4:30, and I thought, So I struggle with that. And then in my group, Lee mentioned, we're both teachers, and I feel bad sometimes, and I hate to even say that too. But, during the day I'm chanting, I'm going to chant a little bit here and a little bit there, but that's okay to do because you're reconnecting with Krishna during the day, and that's actually a gift, and that's how you're connecting back to the holy name. So it doesn't have to be, it's different for everybody. And and I like what Rukmini said, it starts the night before. So it's been just really nice. Thank you.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Okay, so the question about health, if I could just ask a little further, health meaning like what to do about health issues, or how does health affect japa?
So based on the question, they didn't really elaborate. It just seems like if they're having health problems and health problems come up, like how do we handle that in terms of our relationship with Japa?
Okay. My thought process always with health, whether it's mental health, physical health, whatever type of health, is that it's like do everything you can to make yourself able to chant. Because sometimes if someone says, well, I have these problems, just chant, it'll go away. Yeah, but the point is I got to just chant. And I can't chant because I have these issues that won't go away. It's like a kind of like a vicious cycle. And so I see everything as like, if I have a headache, I take ibuprofen and you know what I'm saying? It's like, so mental health, physical health, whatever it is, get yourself in a position where you can at least sometimes peacefully chant, because eventually it'll help you with all these issues, and not not that the japa replaces, for example, if you need your appendix out, go get your appendix out. Japa doesn't replace that. What it does, if you go and get your appendix out, it keeps you from dying so that you can be alive, so that you can chant. So I see all of these things with health is like just getting your body to a point, your body or your mind to a point where you can actually sit and make that attempt to bring the mind back whenever it wanders. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so the person just sent me a message that does help. So thank you so
Okay.
much for sharing that.
Okay.
And Deepa has her hand up. Deepa, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you for this wonderful presentation. Prabhupada has said, chant louder when you can't concentrate. If that doesn't help, should you stop chanting for a later time, or should you just carry on?
You mean if chanting louder doesn't help?
Yes.
Well, I would just try to figure out what's the one of the three things that I'm having difficulty dealing with? Like, why doesn't it help? Is it because I'm too distracted? Is it because I'm too tired? So let's say,
Maybe if I'm emotional.
okay, yeah. One thing I do, especially if I'm in the process of dealing with something that someone said or did that makes me really annoyed or irritated or hurt or whatever. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll stop chanting and I'll just be like, okay, let's think about this for a moment. This person said this thing. Okay, what about it? What will you do now? Nothing. Okay, and I go back to chanting. Or I'll go to the deities and I'll say, I'm having a really hard time. Can you help me control my mind? Can you help me just get back on track? I'll find I may take that pause and process whatever it is that keeps coming to drag my mind away. I'll try to process it a little bit, or I'll make a plan to deal with it later. Okay, this person said this thing. Should I talk to them later? Okay, later. And I'll even write it down in a notebook. Call so-and-so later and discuss such and such issue. And then I'll go back to chanting because now I've put it aside. I'm going to deal with this later. Right now we're chanting. So it helps you to tell the mind, like, we'll get to it. Don't worry, we'll get to it. Just not right now. We have a time, and it's the same thing with like scheduling out my day. If I'm thinking, oh my God, there's all this stuff that I have to do, I'll stop chanting. I'll make a list of all those things and I'll put little time frames next to them. I'll deal with this at 11. I'll deal with this at 1. And then once it's there, the mind's okay, we don't have to think about that anymore. It's on a schedule. We know that after we're done chanting, we'll go and do those things. So it's just troubleshooting, figuring out what the distraction is and trying to find ways to kind of compartmentalize it.
Okay, thank you very much. No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your question, Deepa. And so we have a realization and a question that came in through private chat. And again, it's totally fine if you're feeling shy, ladies. I'm happy to read it aloud for you. So the realization was that they wanted to share that the quality of japa is more important than the quantity, Hare Krishna. So is there anything you would like to reflect back on that before I ask the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The quality is very important. Quantity gives us more time with Krishna and more space to practice, right? So you might have some really good initial quality japa. Like my rounds in the beginning are always better than my last 6 rounds are always like a struggle. But what I might do in that case is, again, put it aside for a little bit and go back to it later and then practice some more. But yeah, I'd say quality is definitely the most important thing. But as we practice and we get better at it, increasing the quality or increasing the quantity really just means increasing the time we spend with Krishna. Because if our goal is to reconnect with Krishna and go back to that spiritual place where we're always with Krishna, we're kind of building up to it. So if we know that we're building up, then yeah, start with quality and then build up and practice.
Thank you so much, Nanda. That's great. And I'm sorry, did anybody else unmute that had a question or a realization on that before I go to the question? Oh, Lee has a question. Lee, please go ahead and then I'll ask the other person's question after you. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to offer my thanks to Nanda for such a wonderful presentation. And thank you so much for encouraging me to sit in gratitude for the attempt and not get bogged down in the perfection. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
That it is a process, not an event. So I really appreciate what you've shared today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. It's nice to remember to sit in gratitude. And before I go into the question, I just want to remind everyone that's here that speaking of gratitude, if you want to write in the chat any feedback that you have for Nanda about the session today, you can either send it to me privately or put it in the public, and I will be putting those all together and emailing it to her afterwards. But the question that we got was about those who are not near a temple. So the person saying, hi, I have visited temples before, and when I do japa with others, it makes it so much easier. However, I don't live near a temple where I can attend the japa sessions every day. I really struggle to do japa on my own when I am home, especially since I don't have any close devotee association. Do you have any suggestions or help for that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are groups that chant together online. I don't know, Rukmini might know more about, or maybe Damodar Priya might know there, but I think there are groups that people who don't live near a temple that will connect by phone or Zoom, and they'll just log in and they'll just all chant together. So I think that would, and I don't know any off the top of my head. I knew of one that did exist, but they've recently, they're not doing it for the summer. But if anybody out there has, the resources, that's what I would suggest, is just logging in with a group of people.
So we actually got a suggestion from Lee. So thank you, Lee, for helping your fellow chanter out. She said that she loves to watch YouTube live streams from other temples.
Oh,
So
that's
other temples when they're live streaming the japa time.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good point.
Does anybody else have any questions or realizations that they want to share aloud? If not, I can continue with some of the private questions and realizations we've gotten. I guess everybody wants to hear me read it aloud because they're sending it that way, which is totally fine. Does anybody else have anything? No? Okay. So the question that we got was about chanting with children. So they say, I am a single mother and my only devotee association are my children, so to say. However, I don't think that they may be as helpful as they think when it comes to chanting. They find lots of ways, wait, sorry, there's a misspelling. They find lots of ways to show me Krishna's beauty in nature or what's going on. However, that really distracts me. Do you have any advice? Thank you.
That one's a tough one. I've never had kids, but I know, and Rukmini, you might know this. I know Prabhupada, I don't quote me on it, but I thought Prabhupada had said somewhere that when women first have children or when their children are young, that is their service to Krishna. And japa during that time may be very challenging. Do you know more about what he said about that? I vaguely remember hearing that.
Yeah, that's really a nice point. And probably like one lady wrote to Prabhupada that she couldn't do deity worship. And Prabhupada said, when your children are little, they're your deities. This is your deity worship. But that brings up a little story that I was thinking to share that I heard from a nice mama devotee. Because a lot of times when you have, young kids, people will say, oh, well, you just can't even chant when you have kids, so just forget it. So she was determined that she was going to try to chant. And what she would do is, I find this a really sweet story. So she was breastfeeding her little daughter, and she just found that whenever she would have a breastfeeding session, it would be half an hour or whatever it was, 35 minutes. And she could get, a couple of rounds done here or there. And she always made sure to have her japa beads whenever she was breastfeeding her daughter. And so those two went together, and she felt like she could do a little bit here and a little bit there. So then she said that when her daughter was about a year and a half or two or something, her daughter was like looking around the house for something, and she's saying, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? And her daughter found her mother's japa beads and then brought the beads to the mother and jumped in her lap. And it was such a beautiful thing to me because the child connected that she could only have that comfort of breastfeeding and having the hugs and love from her mother if her mother had the japa beads. So what a beautiful thing that from the beginning of this child's life, she was
Yeah.
connecting the love and comfort of Mama with the chanting of the holy name. So I think, when there's a will, there's a way. We find a way, and maybe it's not. And I love the fact that we're not comparing ourselves to somebody else, and we're just trying our best. And Krishna's so kind, and he's accepting our loving offering, because of his compassionate kindness. And each one
Yeah.
of us is in a different place. So
Yeah. And I think that's one of the most important things is that Krishna is a person. And that's why when you attempt to bring the mind back whenever it wanders, Krishna is concerned with your sincerity, not with your perfection. And so if you have a child, Krishna is not clueless, right? He knows that it's very, very, it can be very challenging. But I like that because I was thinking the same thing, like, okay, at what moments in the day are the children maybe with somebody else or distracted by something that you can squeeze in around here or there? And that's an interesting uh, uh, technique she came up with. Is just whenever the kid is is engaged in something else that,
Right.
of course the child's like when they're feeding, it's that, they're good. And so you get the rounds in during that time, and then your kids get to hear the chanting and just finding those spaces and knowing that Krishna knows what you want to do. That's one um, name for Krishna, Baba Grahi Janardana. It means he understands your mood, right? That's what's most important. He understands the only qualification for practicing bhakti is your sincere desire to do so. That's it. Just your sincere desire. The rest will fall into place. Every attempt you make for Krishna, every step you take towards Krishna, he takes 10 towards you. So he always over reciprocates. And so knowing that we're just trying as hard as we can and making that attempt, we know that Krishna appreciates it.
so
That's
beautiful.
lovely. Thank you both, Rukmini and Nanda, for that. And we actually have a question from Kelly in
Oh.
the chat. She asked, is it okay to chant in place of worrying? It moves me from there to trust to faith to my sincere desire to surrender. I don't want to offend Haribo.
No, one of the things, Krishna says there's 4 types of people that approach Krishna, and one is the distressed. And they're considered pious. It's the 4 pious types of people that approach Krishna. And Krishna also says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that whether you have all material desires or no material desires, or you desire liberation, you should always chant. You should always approach Krishna and chant. And so it's under all circumstances, you always go to Krishna for everything. So
Thank
it's
you so much.
actually, it's the neglect or the offense would be to neglect Krishna, right? It's rather than approach him under distress, you should definitely, because who else is going to help you out in your distress? I mean, we have our friends, but ultimately, also chanting along with that, talking to our friends, chanting, it's very helpful.
And Nanda, we have one last question. I know we're kind of running out of time. See, time flies, ladies, when you're having fun. So I'm not sure if you can kind of answer this quickly. So they said that they don't feel comfortable sharing aloud because it's something that they've never heard other people admit, that they struggle with seeing Krishna as a person. And it doesn't seem like anybody really talks about that. They say that when they go to the temple and they see the deities, they see how beautiful they are and they love their beauty. However, they really struggle to see the deities and to see Krishna as a person sometimes when they're chanting or participating in temple activities. And it makes them very embarrassed and they don't know who to talk to about that. So if you have anything to help this just sincere Vaishnavi.
Yeah, and also I can give a quick answer now, but you can also share my contact information and we can discuss it more, go into more detail about it. But I think a lot of times why it's people struggle with seeing Krishna as a person is because, and I don't know if this is this case, what they're referring to, but that we've been hurt so much by people. We can't imagine that Krishna would be a person because if he is, we're going to get hurt again. So we just want to see maybe Krishna as a power or as a light or as, something like that, rather than getting personal with someone makes you vulnerable. And if you've been hurt by other people, your defense mechanisms go up and say, yeah, I don't think so. I'm going to put Krishna in a different category because I don't want to get hurt again. So
They just also clarified that they've come from a background where God was very impersonal. In terms of Christianity, they didn't really see God as a person. It was just more like someone up in the sky, and even
Right.
then, they didn't really see them as a person. So they're still struggling to make that connection.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is the thing when you're chanting, you don't have to just saying the holy name, just saying it and hearing it. If Krishna begins to reveal himself, there's no question he's a person, right? So you may start off, now we may see, we're talking about japa as like an approach to a person, but if that's troublesome, then just start by literally hearing the name. Just start by hearing it and see how it goes from there and see. And that could be one of the things Lord Chaitanya is talking about, clearing from the mirror of the mind, is that getting conditioned by a particular tradition to think that Krishna is not a person or God's not a person. And so it can clear away that misconception just through experience.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to all the ladies who have sent their questions and reflections. Even if you did it anonymously, we're getting some reflections in the chat that they are so grateful for those questions. They're such a gift. So thank you for really opening up your hearts and sharing, even if it's shyly, you're still doing it and you're still here. So we're so grateful for you. And we're so grateful for you, Nanda, for taking the time to share all these realizations. I've seen various requests for part 2 on diving deeper into japa. So that's definitely something that folks are requesting. However, it is a time for us to wrap up and hear from our dear Rukmini Walker. So please continue to write in the chat. Keep in mind that you can join our WhatsApp groups to continue this journey in Urban Devi. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nanda. Thank you, Damodar. This has been amazing. And definitely, I would second that. Time for second session on chanting or whatever you'd like to share from your very practical realizations. So I'm so grateful, as I think everyone here has been. And yeah, I wanted to share. So next month, so this Urban Devi, it's on different days of the month, but it's always on a Sunday. So next month, it's on June 22nd, if you want to mark that on your calendar. One of my dearest friends, Manjuwali, who lives in the UK, we're actually going to be having a discussion. It's going to be like a little conversation between the two of us. And the topic is contemplative prayer in Bhakti Yoga. So we're going to explore contemplative prayer and silent meditation as valuable tools for deepening our loving devotional relationship with Sri Radha and Krishna, highlighting the universal presence of introspection across faiths. We'll reference Lord Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita, of secret things I am silence, and of the wise I am wisdom. And we'll discuss how silently focusing on the holy name with each breath can enrich japa, kirtana, and other devotional practices. So sharing personal experiences and practical techniques will emphasize the benefits of pausing for silent prayer to connect with our Lord's, echoing Srila Prabhupada's teachings to always serve Krishna, always remember Krishna, always love Krishna, and recognizing meditation as a gift that invites the divine to soften our hearts. So I hope that's enticing, and I hope to see you all next month in June. Have a wonderful end of May and a wonderful beginning of June. I'm looking forward to seeing you, and thank you all for being here. Thank you all for sharing, even anonymously. That was so rich. I think that's the way forward because everybody's so shy. And remember, don't leave your worry on your heart. Krishna will just offer the worry to Krishna. Put it at his feet, and he accepts the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you, Nanda, so much. Thank you, Damodar Priya. Haribol.